Should. Okay. So I'm excited to connect with you about RC13 Sports. It's a new company. I really haven't had to market all that much, but now I have to start showing players. I have to start showing people what we're doing because I need to hire people, more people to grow. But what we do is durability intelligence. Our programs are really focused on protecting players using portable tools and working with teams to give them training, education, analytics, and monitoring support. That's why we call it our RC13 teams. I know I gave a little bit of an intro on who I am, but I have a dual PhD. So I did the first one in exercise physiology and the second one in motion capture. And my whole focus is how to prevent fatigue related injuries for throwing and hitting athletes. I have tennis players I work with privately, and I worked in Major League Baseball for 10 years with three organizations. Um, and I've taken the role to the top as the director of performance integration. And I'm also a performance advisor for USA Baseball at their lowest levels. So they have an ADP program, and the things that we like to do is teach them the habits, the training methods, and give them that education so that they have a little bit more of a trajectory staying healthy. Developed with some people, armcare.com. It's a monitoring tool and sensor that tests arm strength and range of motion that can be tracked all over the world. And it's one of the tools we use in our plans. And I'm also working with advisors, agents, and scouts. And the biggest thing I want you to take away from this is that with our group, we've worked with over 5,000 MLB players. And over the past 4 years, we've had a 99.7% effectiveness in preventing surgeries of any kind to baseball players. And I'm really focused on this because when it comes to summer leagues, a lot of the hesitation that I think comes from the coaches is like, this is just more workload on a player. And talking about what's happened to teams, moving players around, them not being fully bought in, this is an added layer that I really think what we offer is going to help out on the summer league level. Without going into too much detail about all these things, we are pretty elite at how to improve players' bodies, how they become more athletic, how they're programmed. We're constantly doing injury risk assessment. So we're evaluating players, we're giving reports to teams in terms of when they could be overworked, whether they have fatigue issues or they're imbalanced, they're not recovering well. So we give that information. We analyze ball movement information to look at measures of fatigue through that. And then kinematics is a fancy word where we look at their movement properties. Some teams have a plan where they're sending us video, and I'm having people analyze it. And these things really transfer to stats, this type of programming. On the other side, we have all sorts of people who I have hired from MLB who do mental skills coaching, who are clinical psychologists in some cases. And then we also have dietitians and all the accessory people that a lot of teams don't have. And these pieces not only help the player like with confidence, but there's a lot of decision making, and we help them with the mental game. So the two of those, I think we help players and teams really well. And I think everybody really benefits from the workshops that we put into the plan so that they get some exposure to this information. But the biggest thing is that fatigue is the enemy. So, the one thing that we do as part of our plans, because I'm so integrated with arm care, we integrate technology in with teams so we can monitor them as well as education. We want the coaches to be fully aware of what the analytics mean so we can have, crucial conversations about certain players to create a more appropriate workload schedule, and in some cases, redesigning the way that they train. Key features for us. Oops, I'll go back here. The key features for us is that we are the best at developing lead arm strength and throwing arm strength. However, we do so much work in other areas, like speed development, mobility, core lifting technique, all of those things. But our whole philosophy is strength and coordination training. So, taking something where an athlete is in a position that they would use on the field, but then creating some higher level elasticity to them. We find that players are really too stiff. Bodies don't work well together. They're less efficient because they have to be way too forceful, and they don't have enough stability and mobility blended to be able to stay healthy. Even going deeper into this, so I'll just take the volume off of here. I'm showing you some 3D stuff, is that over years of looking at motion capture, whether it's a pitcher or a hitter, they have very similar tendencies in terms of how they relate to the ground. A lot of our training looks at, how does the athlete block? How do they separate and rotate their pelvis? Just by doing tons and tons of assessments. So taking exercises from a perspective of, where they're training from the ground up, or from the top down, we want to make sure that that athlete has proficiency in movement. And a lot of times, what we find is when players come to teams, they have a school program, they may have to follow that. And what we do is we build in plans around it so that we find the holes and we plug them, so that the players got something that's complete. These are the absolutes. So if there's managers, coaches, people who are looking at this, video, the durability piece is apex for us. We develop these players we call tough mother chuckers, and we definitely want the player to be built to last. When it comes for a team, we do not want them leaving because of injury. That's for sure. And we want to be able to help teams transition players who may come to them for development and say, I'm a reliever here, a long reliever. I need to become a starter, and have a process like that. So we're always using technology to look at availability and readiness before increasing our training intensities. Movement proficiency is so important, is identifying how repeatable the player is, and how effective they can move using their bodies, using the ground without being overly forceful or stiff. And then adding movement velocity. So for some players, we do a very scientific way of doing velocity enhancement in season. We focus on strength and coordination, as I mentioned, versus raw numbers of boosting a kid's deadlift or squat or bench press, which doesn't have, when you get to higher levels, the same transfer. And it's always long-term success, over short-term gains for us. So we teach them habits. In speaking with the organizations, like they might have, like, I don't know what to buy our kids for snacks. We're limited on where we can go to eat, and sometimes the travel schedule is rough. We have solutions for that. We give a lot of guidance for that with our people. Overall, our focal points are improving the single limb relative strength, because these kids, starting from little league all the way through, they get heavier. They start to do more 2 foot, 2 hand training, and they start to develop a lot of imbalances, asymmetries between left and right sides of the body. And we have to correct our athletes in baseball constantly. But we pride ourselves in improving players for the MLB Combine. And we know this from testing them athletically in terms of how we can improve their body speed and sprinting, their lower body power in multiple directions, and how they brace. And as I mentioned, boosting throwing arm strength, that's a big piece. I teach multiple courses on it. So that's got to be a piece. But when it comes to the proof in the pudding, we've been working to develop this proof of concept with a summer league team called the Pistol Shrimp in the Prospect League. The Prospect League truly believes in durability. But this team wanted to have much more, more resources for the players, more injury protection, more communication with our people and our analysts about them, because the time's just limited. They can't dive into data reports, and these are things that we present to them with solutions. But our methodologies and our process, we have a good sense of how to individualize plans, which they need. And again, monitoring them to see when things shift, to communicate with coaches. And sometimes there has to be information that goes to other stakeholders. So we want to be able to help the teams with the information, giving background on how the players are performing, because some of the coaches have to interrelate with their college, with college coaches, and continue that rapport. And, for me, I'm focused on finding teams, finding leagues that we can continually grow this and build durable, like championship players together, give advisors, the trickiness of, recruiting players from certain colleges, peace of mind that there's a service that's out there to help protect those players. And as well, we have a good Rolodex of high level players, in my opinion, that are constantly looking for places to play. Some come off injuries. I've had one go from the prospect league to get a private workout with the Cubs, and changed him from a pitcher to a first baseman, if you can believe it. So there's a lot of partnership and a lot of opportunities, I think, to work, together, especially with people like you. Um, I don't know if you have any questions, but if you do, fire away, and I want to show you a little bit more of the behind the scenes.
Yeah, show me behind the scenes stuff.
Okay, cool.
This is interesting.
Okay. So behind the scenes, so what we do is, we have close to 1,600 training videos. Okay. So I have a whole bunch that are built into the app. Some are, just kind of highly functional where I'm getting athletes to work on one leg, for difference of opinion. So I just know that, a lot of our athletes have a hard time with stabilization, to things that are, more complex. A lot of players are, they're using exercises like trap bar deadlifting. Sorry, I'll put it together here. Trap bar. So that when people see this, they don't have to think, is this a rehabilitation program? It's not. However, we have all sorts of different variations, that we utilize with players. For example, I'm doing one that's banded, where I want to improve the stabilization of them. So I'm actually facing the plate. I'm getting pulled down with the band. I'm going against it, and I'm having to use more stability in the exercises. How can we improve the whole body and how it coordinates? It's not just raw numbers for us. And we also have tremendous amount of speed development. Like if I even put in starts, hang on a sec, accelerations. There's so much from patterning, just rebuilding technical elements of sprinting, posture wise, to drills, so it can go for something that's very simple when a coach says, "Hey, we got some players that, they just don't run that well. They're not fast and they look like they're going to fall forward." These are things that we have in place. Um, a lot of the things that we do from here, with the team. So if I go to my videos here, we have so many educational resources. So if I go here to our videos, we have so many that talk about even like goal planning, all these little mini modules. And we want the players and we want the coaches to have access to this, to all of these pieces. And there's so much, as far as like, what we do with teams. So I got 44 separate courses right here for them, that are digestible. So if I go here, I have some where we build in workshops where I have a dietitian talk to the team. We look at certain things in terms of where the players may need help. So there's more of a consulting aspect to these team deals. And then everything that we have, it's on a very unique dashboard where we're programming athletes in the background, all sorts of different training options, where there's athletes that say, "Hey, look, might be a pitcher, he's a reliever. He's like, I need to train more in season. And I want to lift 4 times a week." Well, we have that. Or a catcher that says, "I want to train 3 times a week." We have that. There is a sea of programs that we have. And on top of that, we're looking into individual players as far as what we can do to adjust their plans. So that's also, an opportunity, that a lot of kids don't get as far as when they're going to train. I'll pull my name up. Um, when they're going to train and they're going to have maybe a particular imbalance. Well, these are things that we can go in and adjust for the player. So we want to make sure that, all of them are going to have a highly durable experience, and we're covering, all aspects. And you might have players that they come from a Division I school, and they have to follow potentially what they're provided. We have a whole host, if it's a catcher's plan, I'm just showing you some of these, where it's like, well, I need to do the arm care base work because that's not in the plan. I want to have some speed development in it, and I want to have some catcher's prep work in there as well while I do the lifting plan that my team has. And so we have all sorts of different activation based areas so that they're really well prepared for them physically. And then there's some really heavy hitting focal points for their arm health. And a third of our programming is range of motion driven and soft tissue care. So, essentially when they come to a team, a lot of the summer league teams, they have places for the kids to train. However, the kids may have varying degrees of programming. So you have some kids that might have something that's really extensive. You might have others that are coming to the team that really don't have much. And so what we want to do is say, okay, this group of athletes we're going to have on this training format. They need the full comprehensive piece. Some of these might need just arm care, right? Just an arm piece and mobility and maybe speed. So we fill in the gaps. And there's really, I've never met a team or a player that has asked for something that we don't have to cover them. And then when they walk away, they come from these programs knowing that I developed in the summer. It wasn't just a playing experience. So that's what we're truly, hoping to have, is that there's access to a lot of different players from a lot of different places. We're helping those teams, but those players are leaving when they go back, gaining even more from their experience with the clubs. So that's just, kind of an overview level of everything.
Who's your target? I mean, are you targeting more teams, more players? Like who's right now using or purchasing your guys' app or
Yeah,
your guys'
yeah. So
services?
yeah, this is great. So primarily, I build teams around athletes. So I'm building teams, they're needing a dietitian. They're coming to me with major issues, and they're really at that top little triangle of either they're a pre-arb player, a major league player, or a transfer portal player. I have some high school players where the parents are absolutely frustrated with multiple surgeries for the throwing arms or the bodies. Sometimes I've had back surgery cases I've had to work with too. But I really want to get to the teams. I'm loving doing what we're doing with small colleges and travel programs. So, like, I'll give you sort of a case and example. Pull out my Crown College, group, where you can see, we're connecting with these athletes and coaches, on such a high level. So we form a pod around the school in the program, and then each week we are giving them a report with a summary of like who we need to work, look out for, and everybody's on there. The communication breakdown isn't there. We've solved that piece. And this is really where my mind gets interested, is how do we help larger groups of kids. And I think that's where the summer league for me, even though it's short term, I feel like they can have, major benefit. And then I'm also, we're also doing stuff for agencies, where it's more risk analysis.
Hmm.
And for me, I love where we can go from evaluation, and then we can get into communication. Then we already have the intervention. It just needs to be implemented in a way that we understand the player what they need, um, and we can execute, the solution, not just be a reporting hub, because we have all the pieces. So
Right.
that's basically, where my mind is at. And we really, it's been so busy and it's hard to scale for me, just doing, building teams around players, because I'm managing it as the chief performance officer of all these small pods of groups, around them. And I'm a perfectionist, which is tough because I I don't want to miss anything.
Hmm.
And now I feel like we have enough my analysts. I have a bunch more that I trust, that they are informing me rather than me having to inform everybody. And so it's scaled in a way that I think would work really well for teams, and has been. The Pistol Shrimp, their first year, they won. Last year, they were a game out. They were almost in the wild card. They lost by one game, but everybody's been healthy, thank God. Like that's the part for me is they're durable. They go back to their teams. They've had a great experience. The coaches are pretty pleasant with, the kid has had some opportunity to get some game exposure, um, and they have capacity.
What is like if a kid saw this and said, "Okay, what does this cost? What would this run me to the one of your programs to run? How does it
Yeah.
work for a player?"
Yeah. So for me, the way I'm looking at it now, the individual piece, because I have MLB people around and it's 5 people and it's concierge, so that means there's no limit on communication. We typically have one weekly meeting as a group, and there's
Mhm.
tremendous amounts of text interaction. It's not affordable. So literally that's where I've focused on the major league, the transfer portal guys, and that they have the parents and everybody they got and the player have the money to put forth for that. But
Right.
started doing subscription based options for athletes, and I've reduced it now to it was 510 and a month, and this comes with our analyst monitoring. But if they're with us for a year, I've dropped that to 250 in half because I really want them to see the benefit. And I find a lot of times if it is the expense, they don't stick with it long enough. And I want I want them to have benefits. So that's what I've been doing right now for players. And with teams, I'm running a sponsorship where I'm buying the technology, I'm buying some of the training equipment because we do have a heavy band emphasis. So I'm bringing that in. And what I'm doing for them is essentially 360 a player, so $360 for the entire year. And the goal is to keep them in the ecosystem, and especially if it's with a summer league team, for these young players, it keeps a connection so that when you're going to staff your roster, at least I've had a lot of players that they go back to their school and say, "Hey Ryan, I can't do the full plan anymore. Can you build these pieces for us?" And I have a plan for that. That they run as a subscription, and my analysts continue to adapt. But that is, that's where it's a select amount of teams. I've not done a full organization, although I'd love to do like the entire league. I want more clear communication with a team so that they're getting a lot out of it and we don't stretch ourselves thin. So a lot of this is continually building a proof of concept, and seeing performance in one club, and we haven't spread it, to the masses. But the summer league is what I'm really interested in because it's a short-term window. The kids carry forth, and if like what we have with the Pistol Shrimp, we just had a meeting on the weekend to have this routine check-in. So the players that are returning, they're already under our umbrella. Like we're already seeing where they need to function better.
Right.
That's where I'm focused. I like the team thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's very in depth. I'll say it's. I mean, your guys is keeping people or keeping players and athletes from injury is huge. I mean, the 99.7% is amazing. Um,
It
that's a
it
huge. It's a really good number.
it takes a lot of work. There's constant on my back, on the backside of everything. Like when I came to arm care, I've come to it with so much in the sense those 10 years in MLB, two of those teams had the highest injury rates. So I got, by the grace of God, I got put, at least with the Angels, for the first 2 years, we led the league. I think we also hit records for the amount of Tommy John surgeries that has ever been experienced in MLB until I think the Padres had almost 85% of their starting rotation pitching having surgeries. And so I learned a lot there. And then as in my movement to arm care was I saw this device that they were just starting. I was like, man, this needs an app. It needs to be a lot cleaner. I know the analytics to look for. And so that was a natural move for me to say we can target a lot of people using this testing implement, which has now reached over 80,000 athletes. But as I had gone on, there was much more to the story that I wanted to put in. Like, what can we do position specific? What can we do to activate a player batting wise? What kind of
Right.
programming can we put in comprehensively to take testing data from various tools, and try to layer in all as much as we can on an individualized way. And then, man, like a lot of my former players were asking me, "Hey, now I start working with you. Can you look at what I'm doing?" And I realized pretty quickly I need to build a whole platform because it was crazy. They were getting stuff from each person that really wasn't working well together. And so I had to really understand where are the blind spots, how can we fill them, and have this interaction with athletes all over, all over. And now it's coaches. It's amazing because the coaches are so grateful. Every Monday they wake up and there's a report, there's recommendations, there's communication back and forth. If someone's had a sore arm, we dig into the data, what's going on, and we remedy that. I tell them, here's the plan with this particular pitcher. He just doesn't show up tomorrow and get him back on the mound. Here's the buildup. So we're looking after these kids in a big way.
What and I don't so arm care is to 100% separate from your RC13, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So the arm care piece I utilize. I put it in because we definitely I want to be able to customize wherever we can, and that's great information for us. That's easy to collect and standard. With some other tools, I use bat sensors for athletes that have had rib cage injuries, back injuries, slap tear issues as a hitter. So that there's a mode to look at workload and fatigue. But what we're doing is we're filling in all the gaps, and that durability intelligence piece. It's got to touch an athlete everywhere, not just in training their arm, but their habits, how they think. Athletes that have had chronic arm pain, we get them resources and people that can help them change and rewire their brain. Some of these kids nutritionally, if they come from a small school, they don't get much. And that's a big piece that, realize there's this player development component. There's this injury protection monitoring component, but these kids lack habits. They lack understanding. And that off the field piece, we got to help, and everybody has different resources where they go to different teams, but we try to help the teams and the players, fill in gaps, so that they just have the best baseball experience, all around. Like
What, what's your number one goal for RC13? Is to get it, is it to get it visible, to get it out there, or what
you
is
know
your
what?
goal for?
It's amazing. It's amazing. I had to hire somebody who's my chief growth officer, and she's really looked at the company in so many different ways. Um, I thought to myself, we do velocity enhancement. It's very scientific. It's costly because we're communicating on the day. So I don't want to do that potentially as a scalable model for everybody. What I do want to
Mhm.
do is this injury protection piece, this durability part. That I know, at least that can lessen risks, by them following along. But for me, what I'm passionate about is two things. One is taking a player who has had like a very chronic, just kind of a sad past in baseball. Just chronic injuries, can't get better. The parents are frustrated. The kid is just so upset, or the player is so upset, like that. So that's like the return beyond performance piece, where that player comes to us and either we help them on a subscription level that fits in with some of the other people they have, or we create the teams around them. So I like that. But really, my goal, what I'd love to do, is eventually hit these schools and help them not only have all this training infrastructure like we're doing now, but build them sports science labs, especially in schools. So if like a school has an exercise science department, because I'm an academic, I want to connect athletic departments and I want to connect the academic departments and say, can we build something together that helps the school for enrollment, but also can impact how we train the athletes, how we're going to be able to have a better product on the field with better technology, and kind of just enrich the whole thing because that strength and coordination piece, I want to match it together. We have better information on how an athlete moves, either efficiently or inefficiently, repeatable or not repeatable, but also having the tools to see how they function. It's going to
Mhm.
accelerate the quality of player. A Division I school is probably more interest in those that say, well, we have a D1 program. There's a lot more students coming in, might be more appreciable, but that small school, how do we get them? How do we get them on the 50-yard line? You know, so that's kind of my thought is I like this. I like that we have this option where we're building teams around players and it's highly extensive and there's communication daily. Um, but then the other thing is this team thing is I'm really drawn to how to touch a bunch of players and institutions in a bigger way, you know?
We'll have over 100 different colleges that play that are participants of the TCL. We play
Wow.
it in one, two, let's see, one, two, three, four stadiums are used by colleges as well as TCL, and then over 500 we're 8 teams now in our league. We'll have over 500 players play this
Wow,
summer.
that's a good amount. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I haven't been like, if you go on my social media, there's only a few players. I've asked them, I said, I want to put some stuff out on you, now that you want to go pro mostly. Pretty much the kids I'm putting out, they're not interested in college. I only have one that ended up getting a ride to Princeton, and he's pretty good. He should have been drafted. I don't know, why. He's probably because he was so Princeton. Um, but I just I want to be able to do this on a very direct level. So for example, if it was your league that everybody agreed and they said, well, let's put this in, that's kind of where I want to be. I don't want to have to go to so many different people to grow this because I like the feedback. And I want to make sure that, the way that we set this up, everybody's been happy so far, but I've had, the coaches that really want this, I know them really well.
Right.
And that we have a handful. So I did a partnership also with the DBAT, which has gone really well. They've integrated us as a training partner for their players, and they're charging money on top of it. They're coming to do their baseball stuff, and now they got this training piece, and they staff a coach that's on the floor. But I really want this to touch different people so that they can say, Ryan, I really love this part of it. Is there anything additional? I'm thinking this to put into the plan. It's just going to grow the concept, I think more deeply. And I think when that's ready, I'm going to be able to come out of the gates with this because I now know what, a good majority of coaches want, players want, organizations want. Um, you know, so you coming to me as a guy who's representing so much baseball, it's like it's incredible because your reach is insane, with all the things that you've done on the business side of things. And the question is, how can I get it in the hands of the people who are there that we can start building a process around it, provide, more of a competitive advantage to a league